Y'all know when Latinos and Hispanics be like black Americans are next? They really thought that black Americans are immigrants. And that explains why they voted the way they voted. They tried to get us up out of here. But I got to say to the Latino community, not only did your ESL classes, but the American educational system failed you tremendously. Because black Americans are not immigrants and we're not going anywhere. And this is how ill-informed they are. They really think because they're in the middle between black and white that they're white adjacent, when that's far from the truth. It's only three categories that's broken down in this country. You have white Americans, you have non-whites, and you have black Americans. The people in the middle, y'all just extras in this movie. The main characters are the white Americans and the black Americans, and sometimes the Native Americans make a guest appearance. This country spent too much money, trillions of dollars, in painting black people as the bad guys. That's the default, to even get rid of black Americans, as sad as that may sound. And you know who's catching on quick, who's learning the game real quick? Africans and Caribbeans. That's why they're cosplaying as black Americans. They're not cosplaying as black Americans to trick us black Americans. They're doing it to trick white Americans because they don't want to be deported.
Latinos have to be more delusional than J-Lo thinking she's really Selena to believe that black people can be deported in their own country and that black people are immigrants.
Are you people insane? What are you talking about?
Through my short tenure on this app, having conversations with people throughout the diaspora and people from around the world, it has come to my attention that many do believe that black people are actually immigrants in the country that we hail from. This is why we get hit with, where are you from? And when somebody says Georgia or New York or Detroit, they're like, no, where are your parents from? And I'm like, New York. They don't get it. And it's like, you arrived here as an immigrant and you think America is a white country. America's never been a white country. America has always been a multi-ethnic country in which white people have been the majority of. Never been a white country. So you don't look at a black person or a native person and be like, oh, you're really American. That's just the reality of this country. We'll always say the only real Americans in this current iteration of America we have are white people, black people, and Native Americans, because those three people have been here since before the inception of America and during the creation of America. Everyone else came after. All the other European immigrants came through Ellis Island. The Italians, the Polish, the Jewish people, the Greeks, all of those people are later additions. We've been here since before all of them. So how can a black person be deported? I would implore you to actually know the history of the country you're living in or trying to occupy. And before you speak to someone who is actually a descendant of the people who have been here since the 1700s, do better. Do better. This is a sad attempt at you trying to force my hand to support Latinos because what's happening right now. I do support everyone, but to say a comment like this is dumb because black people cannot be deported because we're from here. Now, can other black immigrants be deported? 1,000%. I have family that can be deported because I have family from all around the world. But I'm American. But that's a different conversation in terms of identity politics and how Afro-Latinos or Caribbean or Africans identify in this current phase of America. Latinos are the ones that are being targeted right now. Asians are the ones being targeted right now. And Latino people have a history of anti-blackness and a history of colorism within their community. You guys are racist towards your own dark-skinned people, your own black people. So you have to stop looking to black people for like unwavering support, and then in the same sentence be like, well, you're next, or you're ghetto, or you're this. And it's like the underlying tones of racism and threats that you guys put in your messaging aren't helping your cause. They aren't helping your cause.
Let's talk about this new census and the new categories. All right. So this is the census, and it lists a whole bunch of different ethnicities or countries of origin. Right? And when you see the countries of origin, you're going to understand the ancestral background of everyone and who's coming over here, who's being an immigrant or migrating over here to the United States. Okay. So this is how they keep account, and they're making it way more specific now, way more specific. And again, I tell you, the government looks at what you say. Okay. And the government caught wind. Bam. So this is the new census. And now some people are asking, why does African American have American behind it? Because that's our ethnic group's name. That's the name we chose. We chose a compound word. And we chose the nation of our origin as a part of our ethnic group name. That's why. That's our ethnic group's name. Okay? Now, the census does have the other ethnic labels from Nigerian to Somali down on here, and you can write it in. Okay? And the reason they don't have American in that is because, first of all, African Americans we are literally the founding of the country. Okay? Now, as far as the other groups, America is not their origin. Right? It's not their origin. Their origin is from a different modern day country before they got to where? The United States of America. So basically they're focusing on, ethnicity focuses on the nation and cultural origins of a person, right? In the nation and cultural origins of African American is right here in the United States of America. Okay? This is the reason why when you see immigrants come over and you have first and second generation, they have their flags, right? They have their flags. Like Mexico, Mexican people of Mexican descent, they'll have their Mexican flag. They'll fly that. Or they'll have, or people from Nigeria, they'll fly the Nigerian flag. Or from Ghana, they might fly that flag or whatever, right? That's understood to mean that is your nation of cultural origin. Okay? With African Americans, this is our nation and culture of origin right here. Plus it's in our name automatically. Because that's what we chose. That's the reason. That's the reason. African Americans' nation and culture of origin stems right here in the United States. It does not stem anywhere else. It does not stem anywhere else. Regardless of what's in our DNA, we co-founded the country of the United States of America, and our culture comes out of it.
So I'm hearing how some cultures was saying that African Americans are next when it comes to getting deported. Not that I think anybody should be getting deported, but I think that's actually crazy to even think like something like that can happen, because it kind of goes to show how much y'all really know about African American culture in America. In that actually African American is literally just a label. It doesn't really speak to our lineage or where we're from, because whether you know it or not, most of us have Caucasian ancestors. If you know about how we got to this point in this country, a lot of our great grandmothers did not have the option on, who they had children with. So a lot of us actually have mixed and white grandparents. And I'm pretty sure all the other Black Americans on here can speak to that as well. Not only that, Native American grandparents, Native Americans who are actually Black indigenous people grandparents. So in order for them to deport us, it's kind of like they got to pull the thorn out of their own eye first. Because if we really got in our bag and got into our lineage, if they gonna deport us, they got to deport themselves too. You understand? Because my closest roots is right here to home, not to Africa. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure some of my ancestors are from Africa, but that's you gotta go do some research to go find them. But you gonna run into my Caucasian cousins before you even get to them. I'm being real with you. Because they label us as African Americans does not mean we're from Africa. They literally just say that because you're Black. And being Black in America, most likely you're not just Black.
Racism question, which I talk about a lot in my book. No. The reason Americans are sensitive to the race issue particularly is because of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. That's why we have civil rights laws. That's why we have affirmative action and set-asides. But then suddenly one day, out of the blue, people used to talk about integration all the time. It was integration. You don't discriminate against black people, which we had to spend 100 years teaching the Democrats not to do. But that is all about American blacks. It's not about someone who has never set foot in this country before. It's liberals who are the racists who say, oh, you're all brown. We're going to treat you like American blacks. And it's really kind of shocking. I mean, I don't know if maybe some of you know this. Jesse Jackson used to stand at the border denouncing the illegal immigrants coming across. Cesar Chavez denounced them as wetbacks, driving down the wages of the poor. But today, you can arrive from, the Sudan yesterday. You will get affirmative action applying to college. You will get affirmative action applying for government business loans. The 14th Amendment was about one thing, again, utterly insulting to black Americans. The 14th Amendment, why was that passed? So that someday La Raza could usher across Mexican women who were 8.5 months pregnant. They could drop a baby and say, you didn't catch me. I'm an American citizen now. No, people don't put trap doors in a constitution. A secret trap door, ooh, this will surprise them. To get an amendment passed, you need a mass feeling about a big thing. We had just fought a civil war to force, again, the Democrats to stop enslaving blacks. The 14th Amendment is absolutely exclusively about black Americans. That's what it's about. And by the way, it's not about gay marriage either, but they're at least gay Americans. Here we're talking about people who've never set foot on U.S. soil before, playing a game of Red Rover with our Border Patrol for the most precious possession in the universe, citizenship in this country.
And especially the African-American experience. It's literally not duplicated anywhere on earth in history. African-Americans are a completely unique phenomenon as a people. Who they are culturally, what their history is, what their experience is, isn't duplicated anywhere on earth. You don't know where you came from. You don't know what country you came from. You don't know what culture you came from. You don't know what language you came from. You don't know what your religion was before. You, like I've said before, you're more American than anyone because you don't have any other identity. Actually, your entire identity is American-based. That's not the case of anyone else. I'm Irish American. I'm German American. I'm Italian American. I'm Jewish American. I'm this or that, the other. You can say African American, but you don't know anything about Africa. You don't even know which part of Africa. Africans don't call themselves that because I know my tribe. I have my language. I have my region, my country, my whatever. Like me saying European American. I'm not European. I'm specifically Irish and German. But you can't say that. You are American. You're the original Americans. You know? Everyone else is immigrants. You can't even be called immigrants. No. You know, you're originally American, and your culture is as close to being the indigenous culture of America as there can be without you being the indigenous people. You know, you're the indigenous people of the entity called America, called the United States of America. Everything else came from elsewhere. Your culture is the only one that came from right there. Because you were cut off from everything else. You know, there's nobody else like that. There's nobody else like that in the world. There's no other culture like that in the world.
Okay, so I do want to take a moment and expand on what I meant by America being the home of my great-great-great-grandmother's great-great-great-grandmother. When I talked about being a black American that has very long roots to the black American enslaved Negroes in this country, and how being black in America is different from being a black American Negro, descendant of slaves. For starters, that's 12 generations. So that would put her at a birth between the late 1690s and the early 1700s. And that's only looking at my great-grandmothers that are of black ancestry, because just about every black American descendant of chattel slavery also has a white ancestor. Through our paternal line, again, the white ancestor that brutalized one of our black great-grandmothers, he also likely had a white mother, also born in this country, right? She's also my ancestor. as a Black American descendant of the enslaved Black American Negroes. The first slaved ships came in 1619. So then that would mean she likely also had a great-great-grandparent born in the United States. So like that's how far from a genetic connection we have to any single one of our African ancestors as a Black American descendant of chattel slavery in this country. And that's so worth knowing, because when you have a history as complex and as integral to the Black American story as ours, you need to listen to the descendants of those who literally descended from the major players of the American story. Yes, Black Americans are of African descent, but we were stolen. The thieves, or our white enslavers, brought us to enslave the dispossessed Native Americans. And that's just talking about like my Black ancestor. I likely had a white woman ancestor also born in this country, and a Native American great-grandmother. Also, I am the last descendant of my family's line to bear my Native American ancestry, because it's so small that most geneticists would agree that it likely would not show up as an allele in my children. So, know and live.
African Americans built this nation. We built this nation. You know, you're just starting to get real credit for that. Okay, I don't know if you know that. You're just starting to get, you built the nation.
Let's clear something up. Black Americans, we are not immigrants. I repeat, we are not immigrants. Immigrants had a choice. Our ancestors didn't. Let's continue. From the 1500s to 1867, over 12.5 million Africans were kidnapped, shackled, and trafficked across the Atlantic Ocean. Only about 10.7 million survived the trip. That wasn't migration. That was human trafficking on an industrial scale. There were more than 34,000 voyages of people stolen from their homeland and delivered into a system built to erase their freedom, language, culture, and identity. They didn't come to America. They were brought here in chains. And even after slavery ended, the system still was not built for them. In 1790, the Naturalization Act made it law that only free white persons could become citizens. That's not immigration policy, that's racial exclusion. Irish, voluntary. Italian, voluntary. Mexican, voluntary. African descent in America, forced relocation backed by generations of violence and oppression. When you call Black Americans immigrants, you erase pain, blood, and the stolen legacy of slavery. My ancestors didn't get off any boat with a dream. They were cargo.
I'm a prime example of what it looks like to have two parents who are both immigrants, one who's an extreme leftist, God rest her soul, and one who's a complete coon. When my mom came into this country, she came to New York at 18 years old from Jamaica. And within the first 5 years, she started understanding that that propaganda that they fed her in Jamaica, that, oh, you're a special kind of Black, was a lie. So she took it upon herself to read Black American history, because most of her classmates and colleagues were Black Americans, and these people were kind to her. So she took that upon herself to educate herself. My other parent, not so much. But it goes to show that if my mom was still alive, my mom would have voted for Kamala. As far as the other parent, in his ignorance, he voted for Orange. So let this be a reminder to do the work.
I watched that show, The Gilded Age, on HBO. All this talk about how Black Americans aren't immigrants got me thinking about that show in a whole new light. Because this woman is more American than this woman. Peggy's character is based in part on Ida B. Wells. She was born in America. She was educated here. She was writing, organizing, and protesting and fighting for us right here in America. Meanwhile, all the rich folks on that show, they new to America, and that's the reason why I feel like they really trying to like show each other up to like prove how American they are and like shape the country and its values, when we already did that. And they just got here, and our blood was already in the soil when they got here. We built the wealth, we shaped the culture, and we were here before Ellis Island ever even opened. So I find that to be incredibly interesting about watching that show now that we have had the conversation about the origins of Black Americans, because it just helps me to see the show in a whole new light. It's just so ironic.
I have a slight aversion to the term African American. Language has the ability to form perspective. So when you have a group of people who are just as American as anybody else in this country being referred to as African first, almost as if they are perpetually immigrants in their own country, it seems like it strips Black Americans who are 100% American and are just as American as white Americans. It almost feels like it strips them of their Americanness. It kind of invalidates, it kind of sends the idea that they're less American than perhaps their white counterparts. And this is why sometimes when Black Americans travel outside of America, sometimes people, foreigners in those foreign countries will ask them questions like, well, where are you from? Where are you really from? When a white American travels to those same countries, they aren't met with those same questions. They are viewed as the real Americans, right? They are the Americans. In everyday language, white Americans aren't referred to as European Americans. They are not referred to as something else. They are not labeled as a group that is from a different place other than America, even though they are European Americans. And I do feel like this is a part of the reason why there are immigrants, there are people who immigrate here, and they have such a lack of respect for Black Americans because they view being American as being white. That has a lot to do with a lot of things, but I do also think that partially it's also because of language. It's also because of labels. I think one of the reasons why they emigrate here and kind of pedestalize white Americans to the point where they joined in on the othering of the Black American community is because they view Black Americans as the others. There are the Americans, which are the white people, and then there are the others. And Black Americans are part of that other group. And the reason for this isn't solely because of a label that Jesse Jackson came up with in 1988. The contributing factors to this are really layered. However, I don't think terms like African American help. Instead, the term African American kind of perpetuates that Black Americans are not real Americans because they are African and then they're American. And the other group are the Americans because they are the Americans. And that's just not the case.
I'm so glad we had the conversation about Black Americans not being immigrants, because I learned so much about how immigrants think about us. Like, I always had that knowledge of, like, they were propagandized by America to think that we were lazy and criminals and all the worst things a person could be. They said that Black Americans were. But I never paid it no never mind, because we all conditioned by this country. It's Black Americans who think that too. Everybody in this country is sick. Some of us just realize it and some of us don't. One African sister got on here and said she did think that we were immigrants. And the reason why she thought that was because of the term African American. When she thinks about, like, different types of Americans, like Italian American, for example, those people came over on Ellis Island. She thought that African Americans at one point immigrated here. I don't know how she married that with slavery, but that is what she thought. The term African American got her messed up. And I understand that, but I still, because Italy is a country, Africa's not. So if you were to say Italian American, that pinpoints the place where the person immigrated from. But we said African American because we don't know. Africa's a whole continent. If I was Nigerian, I would say I was Nigerian American. So while I do understand their point of view, I still find it to be very anti-Black. And also, that's the reason why I'm not calling myself African American anymore. I'm Black American. That's it.
It is kind of jacked up to find out that, people around the globe thought that African Americans were immigrants. That's pretty jacked up. Like, all this time y'all thought we were immigrants? I don't understand even why people would think that, because here you have the whole Caribbean, the whole South America, and then we have North America right here. And you would think that, okay, yeah, I mean, everybody else is cool. You know what I'm saying? Jamaicans are Jamaicans, Haitians are Haitians, you know what I'm saying? Why on earth would people think that we are immigrants when We got over here before the founding of the country. Why in the world would people think that we're immigrants? African Americans, I mean. Okay? That is so weird. Like, and to see how it actually affected how they voted. I mean, this really opened up a can of worms right here. This really did open up a can of worms. It affected how they voted. It affected all the things they would say about us for a long period of time. Like, they really thought that we were the immigrants of the United States of America. So how is it that people would think we are immigrants? That makes absolutely no sense. All this time. And see now, then when I saw that Cuban lady on here talking about some, you know what? African Americans are the only ones who can help us. For the longest time, we have been clowning African Americans, blah, 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 and they're the only ones that can help us. They can't be deported. So, even though the video was honestly true, right? But when you say that, right? You said that out your mouth, right? That means that the only reason why you would even try to be around us at this point is to secure your status here? After talking all that trash? He was talking about Cubans. I'm going to specifically say she was talking about Cuban Americans. She was talking about Cubans, okay? Nobody else. I don't want to put all the whole... She was talking about that because she was Cuban. She said, I've always been with them, but you know, if you're going to kiss anybody's butt, you're going to have to kiss Black American butt. What? This thing is blowing my mind, really. Because the fact that, because I did a whole video about this and I was telling someone from out of the country, talking about when we come over to the country, we like to align with white people because that's where we get our success from. And I said flat out, said you do not get your success from white people. White people don't even want you here. You get your success from black people. That just went completely over a lot of people. Say just... Like, they're like, how in the world is that? I mean, it seems like the globe does not consider us. And then they would always say, what kind of power do you have? What kind of power do African Americans have? Do you not realize? Do you not realize that there's white people in Congress? And then guess what? Guess who's next? Guess who has the most power in Congress? Black Americans. Now I understand that the globe, many, probably the majority, just thought we were just over here. And now it makes sense why every time they look at us, right, they say they don't consider us actual founders of the country. All they do, they sit there and they say slave. When they see us, they say slave. That's what they see. That's what they see. Because I've actually looked at comments and been called it myself, slave. So they're actually living in the 1700s still. The globe is living in the 1700s and the 1800s when they look at us. When they look at African Americans, that's what they look. So that's actually to our advantage in a lot of different ways. So while we were over here fighting for everyone's civil rights, everyone else was looking at us as that That is so wild to me. And now that the same people they were chasing are kicking them out, or saying we're not going to kick you out. And that's another thing. They're saying we're not going to kick you out, really, if you work in agriculture or in hospitality. They're basically saying we'll let you stay here if you're working the jobs we need worked. That says a lot. Okay, that says a lot. Okay, and the same people that they trying to, get proximity to are kicking them out of the country. Which I said that a long time ago in one of my videos. I'm like, y'all don't know what y'all talking about. What's going on? Flip, 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 flip. I don't know what's going on, but as an African American, just use it to your advantage.
I understand the diaspora wars. Everybody really thought Black Americans were immigrants. Man, that's crazy. Like, no, we're not. But like, and a lot of people don't understand, like, white people, colonizers, kind of shot themselves in the foot when they were bringing us over here, when they refused to have us with our people, when they refused to document us and say our names and things and where we came from, where they only want us to mix and mingle with people who didn't talk like us, believe like us. Like, Africa, the continent of Africa, everybody knows hundreds of thousands of languages and cultures and dresses and things that, like, yeah, they didn't care. They said figure it out, and because they said figure it out, they stuck with us because we don't know.
I'm still here. Oh, I'm still here.
Since it's Juneteenth, I'm also get this off my chest. First of all, African Americans who came here through the transatlantic slave trade cannot be immigrants. Immigrants are people who choose to go to another country voluntarily because they are leaving because of conflict, economic more opportunities, etc. Those are immigrants. So a lot of y'all family came here as immigrants, specifically on boats or coming across borders or however you got here. I don't care if you flew here. That's how you got here voluntarily. Africans who came to the United States as well as to the Caribbean area were brought by force in chains across an ocean, packed in like fucking sardines in a can. So it's disrespectful to say that African Americans are immigrants because we are not here by choice. And then after 1808, when the transatlantic slave trade ended, they began to breed black people because they could no longer transport them across because of all the people who were dying in the ocean. It was not economical. So they decided to breed them. So you are looking at somebody whose family comes from, originally from Mississippi, from a plantation that was a breeding plantation. It didn't matter. They bred sister, brother. It didn't matter. Okay? These people had no conscience. So to say that African Americans are immigrants, it is deceitful and disrespectful. And it's Juneteenth, so I'm going to say my piece. Okay? Because today we're supposed to be recognizing delayed freedom, recognizing that people came here by force, that had to be freed because they were legally being forced to work in the United States, legally. So the issues that everybody's having about freedom and democracy, these are laws and policies, which is why you have to vote. A lot of people think, oh, I don't have to vote. It doesn't gonna impact me. Yes, somebody voted to be able to have slavery. Yep, they voted for that. And so they also had to have Congress people vote to amend the Constitution so that slavery would end. So don't call me an immigrant, boo. There are plenty black folks in this country that are immigrants that came here by choice for better opportunities, but that's not me. And don't you dare say that about me and my family, because you don't know what we suffered.
You're learning so many important things, and I'm so proud of you.
Foundational Black American.
Yeah.
What is that about? Because I feel like that's pure division, if I'm not gonna...
It is. But I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. This is what it is. There were too many black people from outside Africa outside Africa, from outside America, going to America and playing the ass. And what it is African Americans spotted this and spotted that there's a consistent pattern. Black Caribbeans, black people from Africa going to America and being the ass. And what the FBA agenda is putting up a wall and saying, no, you guys can't be a part of this if you're going to be on that, raccoon train.
When you say playing the ass, what? Because from what I know, a lot of Africans, a lot of Caribbeans who go there, academically, they're surpassing them. And also business-wise, they're surpassing them. So who was playing the ass?
When they then use that to say, well, that means that you African Americans are lazy. Do you see? Yes. And then being on some right-wing conservatism, let's throw African Americans under the bus.
That is true.
Let's pretend that Jim Crow didn't happen, redlining didn't happen, breaking up of African American business districts, breaking up of African American families. The COINTELPRO didn't happen. The Iran Contras and then moving drugs into the black community didn't happen. Yeah. And there's a whole list of things continuing right up until now that the American government has done to African Americans. And so for those black people recently arrived from outside America, you all didn't face any of that. So of course you're going to be doing better than African Americans. Duh.
Yeah.
But what's happening is a lot of the people outside Black America don't respect that. And so while I'm not about division, I can't pretend to not know.
I don't know if you can think of a people who were more held back, more deprived, more sabotaged than African Americans. You took everything away from them and took them away from everything. They started in your country at less than zero, literally regarded and treated as subhuman, not allowed to learn to read or write or anything for hundreds of years. But you see, they come from a people of accomplishment to one degree or another, not a people of piracy and theft and appropriation. They come from a people who created and built and developed in their own land. And even though you did everything that you could possibly do to suppress them, to hold them down, to hold them back, and you're still doing that until today, nevertheless, I don't think anyone can dispute the fact that African Americans have become a global cultural superpower. Culturally, they're a superpower. Whatever cultural soft power that America has in the global South, it's African American.
Okay, let's pick up with, we were talking about people not coming back to tell, and you were about to tell me a story about Ashanti's story.
Yes.
Okay.
In 1817, there was this British traveler to Asante, and he spoke to the Asante at that time called Osei-Bonsu. And Osei-Bonsu was asking why the British had abolished the Atlantic enslavement. Britain had passed a law in 1807, and this was 1817, and Asante was beginning to feel the effects of the Atlantic enslavement abolition, because Asante was still engaged in a lot of warfare, so there were still a lot of prisoners of war. And this is where you see the relationship and the effect of Atlantic enslavement, because it would have been an easy access. There would be access on the coast for all these slaves to be shipped. Now Asante was torn with what to do with all these prisoners of war. And then this envoy tried to explain to the Asante that we stopped because he looked at the humanitarian reasons. It was bad, it caused warfare, it did this, it did that. And the Asante chief was very surprised. He said, "Oh, did you know this all along when we were involved in this trade all these years? But we didn't think it was bad." And then he brings out what our internal system and understanding is about enslavement. So it meant that when the two people were involved in the trade, both of them had a different idea of what was happening. So for the African, he knew the internal indigenous system, and he thought it was the same system which was being followed elsewhere. So that was the first time in 1817, when the trade had been abolished 10 years ago, that the Asante Nime was even made aware of the differences between the two systems.
You were saying just earlier that probably at the fort, it's the first time the African began to realize this was something different.
Mm-hmm.
Try to give me some specifics in terms of the kinds of things that would kind of stand out. Suppose the whole family's then captured, kidnapped, brought down from the north, traveled all the way together down to the castle. What would they encounter in the castle that would suddenly let them know that this is not going to be the same situation? They're not going to be taken into a family and become a part of a new clan, but things would be severely different.
Well, if whole families are taken, for example, from the north to the coast, one of the things which will strike them is that they'll be separated. And the separation would at once tell them that something is happening, because most people who would have families would want to keep them. Because in the African sense, the more families you had, the larger the family, the better. And in terms of labor, in terms of wealth, in terms of prestige. So you wouldn't separate families, you would keep them because they were an important asset. Now you get to the fort and castle, and the first thing which is done is separation. You are not regarded as one family anymore. You are separated. Father, mother, children are all separated. And that will be the first thing. The second thing, perhaps, which will surprise some of them, would be maybe the way they are treated in terms of harshness or in terms of even food that they are given.
I'm sorry, yes, I had to cut. Sound is rolling.
77, take 2.
Talk to me about a family coming down from the north. What would they encounter at the castle? Why would they know once they arrived at the castle things were going to be different?
If a family is brought down from the north, for example, to the coast during the Atlantic enslavement, one of the first cultural shocks they would have will be separation. In the internal system, the more people you had, the better it was. So you wouldn't separate families who have been enslaved because you needed them. You needed them for social reasons, for prestige, and so on. Now, a family gets to the castle, and one of the first shocks is that they're going to be separated. They're not going to be recognized as one family. They're going to be recognized as any other individual human being. And perhaps another second shock any family which gets to the forts and castles will experience will be in terms of how they are treated. Because in the internal system, we've mentioned how slaves were supposed to be treated in terms of food, clothing, shelter, caring for them, making them as part of your children. And they'll realize at once that there's an impersonal aspect to the treatment. Perhaps even the food they are given may not be enough. Perhaps they may not be properly clothed. Maybe the same clothes they wore on their way will be what they'll be wearing. And so they'll find that they are in a different world altogether in terms of treatment, how they are cared for, what the concern of the new owners are. And I'm sure that would have given them a sign that they are in for something very, very different. And of course, if they are shipped across the sea, we know the story already. The experience in the ship, the long journey, and what happens outside, it's another further cultural shock. And what saddens me about this whole thing is the fact that people cannot come back to tell the story. They come back when it's very late, when abolition is in the way, to tell the story that this is very, very different from what we know. I have had some kind of cultural shock myself personally. In 1993-94, I was in the University of Texas in Austin, US for 1 year, doing some research from the American sources because I had done a lot on the Ghanaian sources. I had been to London to look at British sources. And I was looking at the American sources. And from my experience in the indigenous system, I had an idea of how indigenous enslavement was like. And as I read through these American sources, sometimes I felt like closing the books because I couldn't take it any longer. And I couldn't reconcile. Sometimes I had to go back a few days and strengthen myself emotionally and come back and say, now you're a historian. Look at the facts as they stand.